Thank you very much indeed. I'm sorry we're a few minutes late. You've done fantastically well, particularly if you were still dancing at 2 o'clock this morning. So you get a gold award. I don't know who's going to give it to you, but in my mind you do. So thank you very much indeed, because conferences can be very hard pounding, particularly if you already had breakfast meetings. So thank you very much indeed. And it's our job now for the next hour and 20 minutes to respond to your generosity in being here and wanting to know about future work and future workers. Now, that's important for you up there as yesterday. It's a great way of you communicating with me as you listen to the three panelists. So I know the kind of things that are on your mind, and you can help drive the conversation rather than just sitting there watching a theatre tableau. So please do use your smartphones or your tablets. And those are the two ways of doing it. And Greg and Hannah and Charles over there will curate it, not censor it, curate it, so that we can work out which direction of travel there is. This is a critical issue which all of you will be concerned about. That's why you're here. But predicting what the new world of work will be, a result of technological change. Will there be work? What kind of work will it be? Will there be employees? What will be the impact for businesses and organizations? How quickly is this going to happen? Can there be a leisurely kind of incremental feel to it, or is this going to happen even more dramatically? Those are the kind of things we want to air this morning. And if you've got a particular issue, particular data you want to bring to the table, then please do make sure I know about it. And if you can, use it on the smartphone, because then I can work out between now and 11 o'clock how best to organize this and prioritize the kind of ideas that you've got. So please be as active as our panelists up here. And we'll try and reward you with as much insight as we can. There's nothing prescriptive about this. There are probably many more ideas out there as well as those on the platform. But what I'd like everyone to do first, the three panelists certainly, is to introduce themselves. So you can always introduce yourselves far better than me. So Cornelia.
Yeah, hard one probably, because I'm a futurist, and that's always an association where people say, okay, that's the people who have the looking glass and they can look into the future and they have this crystal ball, and I do have one for my entertainment only, though. I don't use it in professional terms. I'm the type of futurist, there are several ones, who says we cannot predict, there's not one future but several ones, but we can look at trends and scenarios, and I support organizations, large organizations like BSF or Alstom I've worked with, or public institutions like ministries, in making sense of the future and translating that back into action today.
And you run your own company, Future Impacts Consulting?
I do, yeah.
Excellent, okay. John Higgins, Digital Europe from Belgium, got up very early this morning to come here from Brussels.
I'll try to stay awake, Nick. Hey, good morning, everyone. John Higgins from Digital Europe. Digital Europe's the tech industry, digital industry association based in Brussels. My job's to represent the views of the digital industry, typically in European policy making, but generally in sort of the progress of Europe's economy and society as it exploits, harnesses, or gets taken for a ride by digital, depending on your perspective. My members are big tech companies who are active in Europe, names you would know and love, but also associations, so groups of small companies from every member state and a little bit beyond as well. So I get to draw on Bulgarian SMEs as well as big tech companies that, as I say, we all deal with day in, day out. That's me.
Thanks, John. Ioannis Angelis, you're here in Germany.
Yep. So, hi everybody. So it's cool for me being here. Actually, just to resonate with what you said, I'm a presentist, so I don't know what I'm doing in this panel.
A presentist?
Presentist, yes, sorry, thanks. So, my name is Ioannis, and I'm living and working in Germany. I'm origin Greek. Nobody's perfect, you know. And I worked for more than 25 years in organizational environment. I have served several positions like marketing communication, learning and organizational development. And part of my background is Gestalt psychology in organizations. And one core principle of Gestalt is the here and now. So I'm in a very vulnerable position in front of you talking about the future, but I decided to do so.
Good. I'm going to ask each of them to give their view in a moment, but I just want to clarify one thing. The kind of words we should be using: work, employees, jobs, employers, corporates. What kind of language do you feel comfortable with? Very quickly, Cornelia. Is that the kind of language we should still be using, or should we be using new language? In other words, people won't have jobs in the future, it'll be work.
The latter, I would say, because if we really want to look at the long term, there will be a massive change in how we understand work. I'll go into detail later. So looking only at jobs and at the traditional concept of being employed by one big employer and he dictates how we do our jobs and there's a job description and all that kind of thing, this will not work for the long term, I think, in my perspective. So if we really want to look at the future, we will need some kind of new terminology, and there will be still, in the meantime, some kind of muddling through. Where we still use the old terms and there's still the old reality, but we're shifting towards, we're in a transition phase, you could say.
John, new terminology, yes or no?
No, I don't think we need new terminology. I think if you think about the expression earning a living, I think that's what we all have to do, decide how to earn our living. And there will continue to be a variety of different models as we do that. I absolutely agree with you that the model of we leave school, we go to university, and then we work for the same employer, I can't remember when that, I don't even think that was true in my father's time. So I think we're well into a transition. But I think if you think in terms of earning a living, that does it for me.
I'm just thinking of the words we should be using, Ioannis. What kind of words should we be using, Ioannis? Are you comfortable with the words work, job, employers, employees? Or do you want a new terminology?
I think we don't need new terminology, but a slight modification of the existing. I'm talking about the word work. I would like to have it as with a capital W, which reflects our higher purpose. I'm also comfortable with employment, especially when I'm thinking about the tyranny of employment and the tyranny of self-employment, which is also getting into the game. So I'm comfortable with everything.
All right, fine. I've got one question here already. What sort of learning and development activities will there be at work in the future? So that's the kind of thing that's driving us. And Cornelia, the floor is yours for about 6 minutes, just to help us understand what you are thinking as a futurist of the way this is going to go and the kind of time scale as well. And please offer your contributions as well while Cornelia is speaking.
Yes, okay. I've learned yesterday that it's very hard for me to compress thinking about the long term into 5 minutes. I'll do my best. Could you do me a favor, though? I was told often that I speak too fast, and I've heard Cory Doctorow did the same thing yesterday, so could you give me a waving if I go much too fast, okay? And also if I go too slow, would be the first time that I see this movement. If I should go faster, I'd be really happy to see that sign. Okay, so I'd like to refer to 2 studies that I've recently led or co-led. And the first one is by the Millennium Project. That's the world's largest continuous foresight project, a non-profit one, where futurists from all around the world in 50 nations work together to work at critical future topics. And they picked this issue of work because they thought we're looking too much at sort of national dimensions to really figure out what is the critical issue. And I think you all know that since this study by the Oxford Economics, Osborne and Frey, there has been this big hype around which jobs are falling where. They had a study out that said about 50% of American jobs are at big risk of being automated. And since that study, I think in all industrial nations, as far as I followed, there was a frenzy of trying to figure out which jobs are going to disappear where, and a big fear. So Millennium Project said, let's look at the really long term, not only at what might vanish in 5 years, but at 2050, which is ambitious, we know. And we did an expert survey of 300 experts worldwide, people who also work in the technologies that are supposed to affect work a lot. And what the study said, if you try to come to a bottom line at the beginning, is that we have a high possibility that work in the future might actually mean we do not work. We do not have to work, but we do something else. At least not work in the sense that we know it today. So not in the terminology, in the concept that we have today. Why is that? Because the experts say they debate how quickly what's developing where and what jobs are being taken where. I think that might actually be a quite futile endeavor, try to figure that out exactly, because people don't seem to know, even the best AI experts. But they agree that, that technologies will drive change. So artificial intelligence is at the top of the list, robotics, 3D printing, digitalization. This will change the face of work. This is what they sort of agree on. And the critical thing here is, I think, the artificial intelligence. Because it means that machines can learn to learn. And that's where the difference sets in. We've seen how robotics already has changed the face of work in factories. So it's changing production, and we have the whole big discussion about what we call Industry 4.0, I think you will mention later. And we see that already happening, but the big question at the moment is how knowledge work also will be affected, and that's quite possible when we look at artificial intelligence. So the experts say that we have a chance in an average prediction of 25% unemployment maybe in 2050. Today it's 6%, but the numbers I don't think matter so much. They say we might get into a new society where the machines do a majority of the work. We don't have jobs as before to have to earn a living. But maybe we come into a new system, and we have to come into a new system, where people can earn a living differently, or they can make an income differently. And what was really surprising to us, because it's conservative academics that go into this study, it's traditional professors and heads of HR in big companies and so on, that 70% of those said, we need to look at the basic income now to figure out a new way of how society could function in the long run, and how our social security systems could function in the long run, when it's not labor work, when it's not the job that earns a living that guarantees that we have an income. So that is the most radical thing I think I can bring in from these studies. And maybe to tone it down a bit and to come back to the present, that's a long-term perspective that's out there, where I think we need to start wrapping our minds around it. Nobody says they have the one solution, but we need to start thinking about it. So if we look more closer, UKCS was another project I led that was for the UK Commission for Employment and Skills, and they bring together public sector, academics, learning providers, and companies in the work sphere, and they looked at 2030, so a bit more closer to where we are now. And they said, again, boiling it down very much and simplifying, but if we assume that present trends continue and we don't have a major break, so we don't look at major breaks in development like a world war, a new one, a pandemic or so, but demographic change continues, the technological development continues, value changes continue, and so on. Then we can only, if we only extrapolate these changes, then we can already see that there will be fundamental change of how we work. So one example where everybody actually usually yawns when you mention that is demographic change. Because we've seen so much, we've heard about it so much. But we figured out in this study that if you think through that people might work longer, they are able to work longer, maybe they also have to work longer. This might mean, very specifically, for example, that you work in a 4-generation team. And this is something we've never done before. So you will have somebody in your team that is maybe your great-grandmother or her friend. So a completely new way of the generations working together, because they are just there for longer in the workforce. And the same is true if we think through how a higher share of females will affect the workforce, more international workforces and so on, more freelance work, more project-oriented work. So we can extrapolate a bit what the trends would do to us, and this means that new forms of working come into play. And I think here I refer back to a bit this notion of we need to shift the concepts of the terminology we are using. Because that might mean that not only in the working classes for the blue-collar jobs, there are systems where people work in a way where they have different jobs at the same time and not just one full-time job that pays for everything. But where they go into a patchwork situation, where they have one half-time job, where they have a freelance job at the same time, where they also rent out their driveway during the daytime to somebody who wants to park there because it's a big town and there's short of parking space, where you maybe rent out space in your attic, because you can, because the new platforms make it possible. I'm stopping, Nick. So basically what I'm trying to say is 2 studies show us that there can be, is a possibility, at least, of radical change, where work is not in the old industrial paradigm anymore. It's not organized that way. And on the other hand, even if we don't want to go that radical into that vision, even if we extrapolate the existing today's changes and the trends that we have seen for a long time, then that already means quite a lot of challenges for the individual and the organizations that organize work today.
Thanks, Cornelia. Getting a lot of thoughts from you. And can I encourage you in the next hour, if you can, if you've got a great big idea which you think we should be thinking about, which you're frustrated because we haven't talked about, please make sure that I know about it, because it could be you've got the key to understanding. I'll come to you. Have you got a very big idea? Not yet. Okay, well, no. No, in that case, I'm not going to... What? I'll come back to you in a moment. I'm trying to use this at the moment because I don't want to break up the rhythm of the discussion from the platform, but the kind of things that already you're posting about future of work, the impact on traditional professions like lawyers and doctors. Are industrial countries leading the transition? What types of new skills do workers need to have to survive and thrive in the workplace of the future? So if you can underpin your remarks with those kind of things which are on the minds of our audience. John, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Do you mind if I stand up? I
Please,
feel like I'm at the breakfast
around.
bar here.
You can go to the back if you want.
No, I won't do that. But
serve coffee.
Yeah, that would be a nice idea. Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. I'll explain the sort of context for this, but I discovered relatively recently that in 1831, when Sir Robert Peel became the British Prime Minister, he mused. I like this idea of him musing in his country house. He said, we might prefer that Britain were to remain a country of cotton fields, of cornfields, but we're about to become a country of cotton mills. And we might prefer that wasn't the case on moral and social grounds, but the die is cast. It's inevitable. And I thought about this in the context of a piece of work that I was asked to lead for a part of the European Commission, looking at the digital transformation of Europe's industry and enterprises, and to some extent its public services as well. One of the, I think, interesting pieces of data that we discovered is that if you look at this wave of new technologies, and we can all choose our own, new technologies, but I think probably the big ones to me are certainly robotics, cognitive robotics, and artificial intelligence that you referred to, but also just the basic stuff being connected, this thing we refer to, the Internet of Things, and many more cheap sensors. So if you think about these and some other, mobile technologies, apps, and social media, if you think about this sort of wave of new technologies, and then you look at Europe's industrial and public service base and its adoption of those technologies, then the figures suggest that fewer than 2% of European enterprises are fully adopting these sorts of technologies. So, we're like a 50th of the way on the journey. Now, are we going to complete this journey or not? I leave maybe that for you to muse upon. But let's assume that we are going to be, on this journey. And when I talk to people in my industry broadly, that's what they're about. They are working with their customers day in, day out, applying these technologies to help them improve their performance, productivity, and competitiveness in the global market. So it seems to me that the pressure is on to adopt this range of new digital tools to improve the organization. So I think it is happening, and it's going to continue to happen because that's the sort of the economic pressure that's going to cause it. So what does that mean? I don't really buy this model of the hollowing out of all the jobs and, I don't buy it. If you look hard enough, you can always find a study that supports your prejudices. I think that's the way to approach studies, isn't it, generally? You find one that supports what you believe anyway. But there was an interesting piece of McKinsey work that said, actually, what's going to happen is that a portion of everybody's job is going to require the use of these sorts of tools. And it doesn't really matter whether you're an interior designer, you're caring for your mum, or whether you're a software engineer. You know, an increasing part of everybody's job is going to be impacted and probably be improved by the use of these sorts of tools. I mean, somebody was telling me about the job in a motor factory, that even today there are people who have to carry 7-kilo engine blocks down a line. I mean, people are still carrying these things. And so the idea of exoskeletons that, you know, help you lift things without straining your back, and to think about that in the increasing number of carers that there are in the world, how much time they spend lifting. I think the idea of technologies helping people to take out the horrible bits of their job is quite an attractive proposition, and that's the sort of model that I'd like to believe. So I think then what does that mean in terms of then, final point, the sort of skills? And I thought I would maybe not do a detailed study, but I'd just ask some of my smaller company members, you know, what sort of skills are they really looking for when they're recruiting people today, maybe in the software business or in digital technologies generally. And I think I'll pick out three. I mean, there are a number, but I'll pick out three that I think are, you know, not necessarily immediately intuitive that they would be these things. The first was a sort of analytical reasoning, an ability to identify different sources of information, to make judgments about those sources of information, and be analytical about that information, and increasingly numerically analytical, because you know, big data is everywhere. It could be, which school shall I choose for my kids when they get to 10? I need to look at the sort of rankings, all the data. So all of us have to understand how to deal with data and make judgments and draw conclusions and be analytical and trust which sources do we use in this sort of Wikipedia age. So the first thing is the sort of analytical, data-driven reasoning, I think, would be the first sort of skill that I think is increasingly in demand. The second is one about not following processes, but rather being able to understand what the goal of the organization is and use your intuition and judgment to be able to help the organization move towards those goals. There just isn't time anymore to lay out all the detailed processes, and anyway, they keep changing so quickly. So, you know, my employers, my members are looking for people with that sort of intuition, being able to use that analytical reasoning we just talked about to move the organization along in the right direction. And then a third one that I thought was also quite interesting. Well, actually, maybe there was a 2A. The 2A was, and you'll all be familiar with this, was how to filter out the massive information you get and decide what's the important bit, this sort of filtering skill, and not be overwhelmed by it. How many people have you talked to who are just don't know how to deal with the volume of information, don't know how to filter it? So there's a sort of 2A filtering skill there. But I think the third big skill after that analytical and the sort of intuition taking you in the right direction, the third skill that people are looking for is and you might think, well, this is a bit of a hackneyed old one, but is working in multicultural and multidisciplinary teams. Increasingly, new stuff's happening at the borders of disciplines, and being able to apply those other two things that I talked about in a multicultural, multidisciplinary way, and at the same time be using modern collaborative tools. Because, it's not easy to work in teams using video conferencing, collaborative tools with people in different economies, different backgrounds, different thought processes, and, and one's a material scientist and the other's a medic. I mean, these take some doing. And I'm not, as it were, making this up. Somebody told me the other day about a methodology they're using called the 5 whys. So they keep asking, why? I mean, your kids are all good at this, aren't you? Why, mummy, why? But, use some of that. Why? So, to sum up, I think the digital transformation, as part of an overall modernization, a push to improve productivity, competitiveness, and performance, it is on us, and it's only going to get bigger and be more in our faces. It is happening. So the second then thing is, therefore, what sort of skills are we going to use, and is it going to apply to everyone? are all these jobs going to disappear? No, I think everybody's job will change, and a lot of new jobs we haven't thought about will appear. And the third thing is, it's not all about those hard skills. I think there are some particular database reasoning skills, together with team working, multicultural. I think those sorts of skills are going to be important.
Thank you, John. Great. And a lot of comments coming through. Let me give you a taste before we go to Ioannis. First of all, from Benjamin Honer, I like the idea of a distinction of work versus jobs, but work doesn't sound right to me. How about paid activity? On skills, this comment from Gemma Critchley, I think future of work will be individual-centric, so people take their skills to wherever suits them. You can comment about this in a moment, but I just want to put this on the agenda. Belinda Tynan, how ready are we for the multiple layers of possible incomes when the sole job disappears? In other words, the psychology, quite apart from the pragmatics of where the work will be. So those are the kind of things that are coming in, and there's one particular which I'm going to put on the agenda now for you to think about, from Ferry Boschman. What kind of legislation from governments is needed to support and stimulate novel ways of employment? I'll come back to that in a moment. Ioannis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nick. So I'm going to stand up as well. I have my small cards here. So what I would like to point out is that when we enter a discussion about future, we cannot leave outside the door our wishful thinking and our projections. So maybe this is one reason why our predictions about future fail, because they are based on our projections of today. And I would like to go through, as we have it in our small questions in the program. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the future work and the future worker, but I cannot exclude something which is interdependent, the workplace of the future. And I think it's very easy for all of us to predict what it will be, this workplace. I don't think it will be just one place. It will be multiple ones. And name them offices, name them home, name them vacation places, coffee shops, even spacecrafts. What I think it's going to take place there is a lot of virtual works and also virtual learning. But I feel the thing that's going to change totally the organizational field is the virtual reality workshop. And at that time, I believe that virtual reality is not going to be the way we know it today, so with the Oculus Rift or the Google Cartoon Box or whatever. I believe that we will be wearing contact lenses, so this means that probably we will have an immersive experience which will give us a real perception of reality. So now, how is this going to affect our relationships in the workplace, or how it will affect the profitability of the organizations? At the moment, my imagination is very narrow to shape. Regarding the work itself, there is a paradoxical demand today, which is a permanent call for simplification in order to deal with the complexity in organizations. And there is an already existing trend, which I see it also in my organization, which is done is better than perfect. And it happens in Germany as well, I can assure you that. So, and the question here is how technology could help people to make a choice in the right direction, or maybe not. And I would like to share with you a short story. It was 4 weeks ago that I was here in Berlin following a conference about change, and there was a small workshop on digital transformation. It was led by two IT experts. They were working on SAP systems. Apart of that, they were really nice guys. And there was some time that one of them stood up, and something between guilt and pride, he said, "We are the ones that we make the world run faster." I said, wow, okay. And then there was a discussion, and I asked him, "Could you slow down?" And the answer was no. So that's quite interesting. I mean, speeding up is an attitude that it is existing today, and definitely it will affect the future work. And I think that speed is an issue because, from my perspective, it's the enemy of nearly everything that matters in our lives. It's addictive, it can become viral, and it undermines our creativity, quality, connectedness, and our relationships at the end. So I have a small proposal then to all of you, like, you know, how to move in the future. So just slow down if it's possible. No. Slow down, I think it's learning, because it takes their reflection, which is very much missing from today's organizations. Now about the worker of the future. So how many of you are familiar with the nomad society? Please raise your hands. Nomad society? Or just a few? Okay, nomads is a society that they claim to get today that they are the workers of the future. And they characterize themselves as nomad workers, that they can work for anybody, anytime, in any place. But I'm going to leave them. I'm going to leave them for later on discussion, if you like, because I want to come back to us. And I want to say that I consider all of us here in this room still being the workers of the future. And I'm not thinking in terms of age. I'm thinking in terms of influence. And I would like to use the word we as I'm talking about the workers of the future, because I want to go to three key motivational drivers for the worker of the future. So the first one is that we want to fulfill our higher purpose. And I think this is going to be more prominent. You may say that it is already existing. I feel it's going to be more prominent because of the crazy world that we are living in. I consider myself as a missioner of Theory U of Otto Scharmer. I think you know Otto Scharmer, most of you. And in his last MOOC, we have been 40,000 students. And we have created thousands of hubs all over the planet working for a better future. And I strongly recommend that you check in the internet and find Theory U. Second key driver is that we want to be autonomous. And of course, this will affect learning and education, because autonomous means also to take ownership of our own learning. This will have some implications, and in the organizational environment as well. And there is a challengeful question there. So does the organizational culture of the future will support the autonomy of their workers? If you ask me, if we continue screwing it up as we do now, means, you know, basing our present and future in hierarchical systems with a lot of control, then the answer is no. And if this happens, then what will happen to the workers of the future is this, that in Gestalt we call it creative adjustment, which means there will be a conscious choice that the people, they will continue working in order to find their meaning in life, but they will fly under the radar. They will work undercover, or even they act as Trojan horses. How many of you do that already in your present jobs? Nobody? Interesting, because I'm doing that. And the third key driver is that we want to be competent and skillful. And John already mentioned some skills that will be needed. What I'm missing in a lot of discussions about the skills of the future is one thing, and I would like to point it out. I think that all of us, we need to be change makers. And not in terms of how to deal with project management, you know, change there, or in terms of IT initiatives, but in terms of how could influence humanity, getting into our organizational environment. So we need to focus on humanity. And I think that dealing with change, it needs to be learned not as a skill, but as an attitude. So, finally, I don't know, in order for you to meet your work of your dreams, or to be the worker that you dream to be, maybe it needs to slow down. And I would like to take you now into, to invite you in an imaginational journey that I would like that we do together. I'm going to cheat a little bit on you, because I'm not going to take you to the future. I'm going to take you there, but first we're going to go to the very distant past. not so close to 1831, a little bit more beyond. And I would like to take you to the ancient Greece, to the marketplace, which was called agora. And, in this marketplace, you find everybody there. So Plato is there, Aristotle is there, Socrates is there, the slaves are there. And I would like that you take this marketplace and you bring it to the future. And just exchange the slaves with the robots, okay? And let the robots do the nasty, dirty jobs. No matter if they are intelligent or not, we don't care, I don't care. Just let them do the nasty jobs. And imagine this place to be, we are going to be the thinkers there, as we are talking about the work of the future. And it will be the place where our athletic, our spiritual, our artistic, and our educational life will blossom. So, I don't know, can you imagine? So, how does it feel? So that's my small gift for you. And the ball is in your field.
Thank you, Ioannis.
Yep.
Right, a lot of points coming up here, which I'm going to put, which I'm now moving around to make sure there's a certain logic to them. But let me just pick up on one point. Slow down. How can you slow down in a portfolio existence? Those of you who know a portfolio existence, you can't slow down because you're constantly bidding, looking for work and building on work. You don't want to miss out on work. Just to be practical, can you really slow down?
I think, yes, we can. We can do everything as humans.
All right.
Yeah,
okay.
I think we can do so. We just need to change the mindset of how we work in organizations in general.
All right.
I think we can.
All right. Now, the other question, I just want to get over...
Can I build on
please,
that?
yeah.
I would like to take up the ball here for a second, and exactly on the focus. And I mean, I'm in the situation, I built up my own company, and it's a service-driven company, so if somebody calls, you have the feeling you need to react immediately and so on, and there is this manicness of the speed and the acceleration and the emails coming at all times and so on. But I think taking a step back, it's actually the critical ability that we need to develop, because the technology, it has, you mentioned, an addictive quality. It produces dopamine because we think something nice might come, and actually the fact that not every time something nice comes means the dopamine is stronger, so it's really a hormone that's driving you to check your email all the time. And we have not learned how to deal with that technology yet. We're just using it, and we're just in reactive mode. And that means that we also lose the capacity to set direction, because you can only set direction if you're not reacting all the time. And that's critical even if you are in a portfolio or a freelance, self-employed situation and building up a business, that you have to do that. And I think it's something we also need to teach.
All right.
That's what I meant by filtering as well.
I'm going to ask you to keep your answers relatively short. There's so much to get through here, and I want to go to also with people on the floor. And apparently some of you are having difficulty getting tweets through, so my apologies, but keep going. There is a Wi-Fi limitation in this room. But here's a thought from Ernestine.
Is it not fast enough, Nick? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we have to go
it's
faster.
Not faster. We have to go
faster.
Oh my God.
No, shorter.
I'm leaving this panel.
I said shorter, not faster.
Ah.
There's a difference there.
Thank you, Nick.
Ernestine, I'm on your side, Ioannis. Why is it that the world is changing at a rapid speed and we as workers have so many problems coping with all of these changes? Aren't we as workers obstructing the changes? Is that a very valid point to make? In other words, workers, those who are working, are so concerned that in some ways they're dragging the ability to cope with it.
Two perspectives. I think it's not so much the workers that obstruct the possibility to deal with it, but more the systems, and that the systems, especially the big systems, are extremely static. One of our key motivations and factors for happiness is self-development. We want to change, we want to create something, we want to leave an impact that relates back to the purpose you mentioned. So that's what people want to do if they are not completely broken at the moment they are working. And what I see when I work with companies is that when we speak about, for example, the future of learning and future of work, and we create beautiful visions for the company, and then we go back and say, okay, how can we implement this? Can we create an Agora-style web place where we all debate something, or just on this one idea of the self-directed learning community we want to implement, or something like this? And then the systems go, no, we have to talk to the IT people. We cannot go on Skype. We cannot, oh, Google Docs, no. So the systems are really quite static, and they are about building borders, while at the moment the technology, and I think also what the people want to do, are very much about connection and about opening up and democratization. So I would argue, in a sort of simplification again, it's more the big systems that are at the moment obstructing it. It
John.
wasn't short, I'm sorry.
I was at a conference the other day with a bunch of entrepreneurs, and I said to them, so how many of you want to change the world? And lots of, typically, lots of hands were up. And how many of you think the world wants to be changed? Actually, not many hands. And what I was thinking of
Do you want to ask that question now?
I was, well, I'll let you do that, Nick. But what I was thinking of was that I think the week before we were trying to hold a meeting in our office in Brussels on the 7th floor, and the taxi drivers had completely blocked the 5-lane highway that we sit over, and they were letting off firecrackers, and, it was all this sort of anti-Uber thing that's happening in many capital cities. So you might want to change the world, but not everybody wants to be changed. And to some extent, institutions are there to avoid those sort of massive fluctuations. But I don't disagree with you. They can be quite difficult to change.
Ioannis, people who don't want to change and are still by the nature of human existence, they are still relatively conservative and comfortable.
So I strongly believe that people can change only if they want to. There is no other way. If they don't change, either they resist, either they adapt. And in organizations, we very often are confused about adaptation and change. It's not the same thing. I will slightly disagree with you about, I will escape from shifting the responsibility to the systems. It's a shared responsibility. Okay, I can understand that the systems are really pushing employees, and we have today 80 hours per week working. But the same is happening with self-employment. And this is our own responsibility. And I say this as a tyranny of self-exploitation, because this is what we are doing today. And as I said in the beginning, my wishful thinking is that this will stop. And one key driver is slowing down. I'm coming back to that.
All right, let me come to a couple of those questions which I gave you notice about earlier. Does the panel have thoughts on how the future of work will be for those in traditional professions, lawyers, doctors? That from Gina Alexandris.
You're all looking at me.
Well, I think I already said, I think elements of their job will change and are changing. I think the conference heard yesterday that increasingly we take control of our own health management. I mean, I think we're being pushed in that direction, and we're doing that more and more. And I mean, you all remember that 10 years ago, you'd go to your doctor and you'd have a conversation and you'd say something like, well, I was looking on the internet. And they'd go, oh, God, you were looking on the internet, were you? That won't get you anywhere. And you don't tend to get that sort of reaction to these. So I think technology will change impacts of all those jobs. It won't take the need for them away. I understand with lawyers, for example, already they're using software to do word searches on big piles of documents, so they sort of know where to focus in on the evidence that they find during the discovery phases. Rather, you've probably got friends who are lawyers, and you see them with these big suitcases of papers, and you think, my God, you've got to read all that before tomorrow morning's case. So I think they're using intelligent software to speed up their process. I think we'll see more and more of that in professional jobs now.
Can I elaborate on that? So I'm a heavy mooker, just to tell you. So I'm mooking like crazy. And I was very much intrigued with a MOOC in Coursera, which was cataract surgery online. So, and I was very much interested and said, what the hell is that? And it was very interesting because all the top-notch cataract surgeons were there exposing their videos and their experience and so on. If you ask me, would you really do your cataract surgery on a person that learned that online? I don't think so.
When you MOOC like crazy, can you do that slowly?
I do it slowly, yeah.
All right. Let me pick up on that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick through a lot of these questions here for the next 10 minutes, and then I'll open it out, including using these questions as a spur to get the microphones to whoever has asked the question.
Can I just challenge Ioannis on that? Would you prefer your cataract surgeon hadn't looked at lots of YouTube videos of how to do it from experts then? How would you prefer that he or she had learned? Wouldn't you prefer that?
I think, yeah.
Okay, okay. Just
You got a point.
Just wondering.
Can I ask about the role of government? That question from Ferry Boschman. What kind of legislation from governments is needed to support and stimulate new ways of employment? Or is that simply unrealistic, that this has to evolve in its own, with its own organic dynamism?
I think there's a key role. I mean, maybe to give one example, in the Netherlands there's been a new legislation that says it's the employee's right to work from home or from where they want to work, which I think is a very good example of where at the moment we see that there's a saying by William Gibson, the sci-fi writer, who says the future's here, but it's unevenly distributed. And the fact that knowledge work has become completely independent in most cases, if you don't have to be in a personal meeting and talk to people from location and time, and you can actually do it more or less anywhere. That's a fact today, and you can see if you go on an ICE where I came in, 80% of the people were working. And some had an agreement with their employer, obviously, and they had these films on their laptops, which helps us not see what they are working on, so they are probably not breaching all the secrecy agreements they have signed in the company. But lots of people have not. They don't have the legislation around it, they don't have the agreements around it. And this Dutch example, it says, it's your right. And the employer actually has to prove that it's not possible for them to work from home if they want to. So it turns around the principle of who decides about this, where at the moment we see that in most countries and in most places, the employees go up to the employer and say, can I do this and can I do at least a day from home? And they say, maybe unofficially, but not, you know, we don't want to put it on the agenda and say it's for everyone, it's difficult, we have to wrap our culture around it and so on. So I think policy does have a strong role, and they could set strong impulses. But it's a dialogue process.
The role of government or not, John?
Let me entirely disagree with that perspective, just for a bit of interest. I won't really entirely disagree, but I think legislation is a very blunt tool. And I think, if we think about reactive marketplaces like online auction or anything where you can rate somebody, you get a much faster reaction from marketplace rating. So I think I'm actually much more of a fan that we are much better influencers than the slow tool of legislation. And often, I mean, it takes so long, and it's just a blunt instrument. So I'm not saying it should never be used, but be very, very careful about where you ask for legislation and recognize it's a blunt tool that may well have unintended consequences and take a long time to get there.
Ioannis.
Honestly, I have no idea. It's not my task, but I can tell you from my experience what's happening in my company. Still, it works in a very flexible way. You want to work from home? It's fine. As long as you deliver, I don't have a problem.
Let me pick up on where this is now going, particularly for the next generation. And some of this was raised yesterday, but let me see if I can get more from you. From Gina Alexandris, what do we advise our children about preparing for their future work? How they should prepare? Children, teenagers, is there an awareness of the way in which they have to think about the way their degree or their qualifications are going to be used in future? Is that already significantly underway anyway? They're making their own decisions and they're thinking in a very, very different way already. Cornelia?
Learn to code would be something I keep saying now. So the technology skills are the sort of the first place to start. And not only the user skills, but the ability to also understand what the algorithm actually does that might be working with you, as John has lined out. And then secondly, I think it's really this issue of, and the younger generation might actually be more there than we think already, that the adaptability and the question of going back to what you really want to work on. So what is your direction? What do you want to change and where do you want to use your energy? And how can you self-direct? Where's your agency in this? So an empowerment principle to speak of. And I think we see a lot in the sort of what's discussed often in a derogative way about the millennials who say, oh yeah, I want to work, but I don't want to use all my energy for this. I also want time for my private life. So they put other questions already, and I think they might actually be challenging us quite a lot.
John?
Well, thinking about my own 3 now quite grown-up daughters, I think the first thing is tell them exactly the opposite of what you want them to do.
All right.
I see that, that a few people recognise that syndrome. No, but I do think your point about teaching them that basically they're in control, or they should try and position themselves to be in control. That they're the ones who should try and decide what they want to do, and then take steps to empower themselves to do it. And it's not all about work. But this is all obvious stuff. If I come back to the sort of specifics to do with the workplace of the future, I do think this thing about being critical about your sources of information. Coding, if it helps you be more analytical. I was a bit sceptical, frankly, about coding to begin with, but I think if it teaches lots of people to be analytical, then I think I've come to the conclusion that it's a good tool to do that, and being able to handle lots of data, and those other things we talked about as well, about how to deal with overload and filtering, and not feeling guilty that you haven't responded to the email that you received at 10 o'clock at night and it's 11 o'clock. Teaching them some of those sorts of things.
And they will not be on email probably, but they
no,
are
indeed, or whatever,
another principle already.
Indeed,
Yeah, it's as the kids and the workers of the future are slowing down, but as they have to confront this, what would your advice be? Or certainly to their peers, but also to those to them, to understand about the new reality? Or do they already get it in a way which is so significant that we don't need to really be talking about it this morning?
I believe that we have quite a tough task as parents, because we are interdependent with the educational system that our kids are in. And the way it's like now, like the stick and the carrot, it's not working like I would prefer. So we have something like, we say to the kids in the school, if you do the A, then you get the B, and then this would lead you to C, which is the college or whatever. What I am telling to my boys is that the only thing I would like to see from them is to feel that they have a goal. And that's what I'm trying to learn them. Just having a goal.
Let me use some of these questions to stimulate thoughts from you using a microphone. Gernot Frank, where are you? Because you make an interesting point, please, about reliability of data. Can I get a microphone to you? And I'll come to you in a moment. And also Bent Langvik Olsen, about particularly large groups of employees. Where are you, Bent? Please. Are you here still, Bent? Yes, please. Could we get the second microphone here in a moment? But before we do that, can I just pick up on a couple of questions here? Could you give examples of which human jobs are most at risk of replacement with digital tools or technology? And this from Clark Quinn, one of the speakers. What to do with folks doing manual work that will be replaced by automation? Can we turn them to knowledge workers? And I'll be interested in other comments from the floor on that. John?
Well, as I think I've already said, I think.
Yeah, but can you build on that?
I know. Yeah, but elements of all jobs are going to be impacted by digital. We're already seeing that, and some more than others. I mean, this is a long-term trend, isn't it? I remember when I first started work as what was then called a systems analyst. My job was to put systems in to replace people who were making up payroll. You know, it was actually a payroll system. I'm talking quite a long time ago now. And we've gradually seen that trend. So it was the clerical work that disappeared, pretty much completely in the early days. And now I think it really is elements of people's jobs rather than whole jobs that are disappearing.
The adaptability. What do you think, Cornelia?
Adaptability of the people in terms of skills, you mean?
Yeah. In other words, picking up Clark Quinn's, what to do with folks doing manual work who will be replaced by automation? Can we turn them to knowledge workers?
Really tough. I come from Duisburg. That's not small town, 500,000 people, but a town in the industrial area of North Rhine-Westphalia. So it was a steel town. So that was our major industry, and we had lots of migration in a positive case, a good community where the migrants were well integrated, and then the steel industry went down in the 70s. And now we have one of the highest unemployment rates there, and it's really tough, we can see, for the instruments we have now, to turn the people who worked in these industries into knowledge workers. I think for the generation, their kids, it starts to work, so a higher share of them now goes to university or takes some kind of higher education and becomes what is called a knowledge worker. But for the older ones, it is really tough. I mean, there, I think, comes into play what I mentioned at the beginning, the question of whether we need other social security systems and bring them into community work, and other ways of work is also a key to social cohesion and participation. And you can see that in these cities, that when they were working, they were integrated. But the moment that the work stopped, you had this closure of the communities. So can we find other ways then for them to bring them into the community, I think would be a critical question.
Well, I'd like to hear if you've got any examples, and I'll come back to you. So I'd like to know about
Can I
this.
elaborate on an example?
Sure,
Yeah?
about how tough this is, but how it can be overcome, because obviously there are communities looking for new ideas of how to achieve this. Ioannis.
Yeah, I have a living example. So it's a paradigm from an organization that they asked a huge group of workers to work some years ago on improving the automation in the production plant. And this is where I mostly see a big impact on human workers, the production area. And because there is a lot of automation getting into the game there. And these people, they developed really the project nicely, and they developed the robots that actually they were doing the job. And what the organization did is that it fired these people. So we have a living example, the way it's happening, the replacement. It's not how it's the way it's happening. And this has been through this experience for knowledge workers, so they gained the knowledge which could support the organization after. So that's a very critical point.
Has anyone else got an example on this particular issue of how you transfer? Think about it and come back to me. Okay, let me pick up on Professor Frank, please, because your comment about the reliability of data particularly.
Yeah, well, that's a bit strange for a micro.
You can
actually,
throw it around as well.
I can throw it there. Actually, I have two questions. The first was when you had you gave your remarks on numerical analysis and the skills that will be necessary. I think there should be a first skill developed, and that's how to decide between the reliability or the non-reliability of data, because we have new amounts of data coming up, and the numerical skill is more or less something which is not really related to the content of data. It's the first step is to analyze the data, and therefore we should have we should develop one competence before. That's to decide reliability. But I have a second question, if it's possible.
It depends how long it is. Okay, fire away quickly.
Okay. Knowledge worker. Knowledge worker was a term of more than one. We know, and out of my view, it's a strange situation. We have an organization which could be done in some ways at homework. But on the other side, we know two aspects of work. One is a social side. That's a communication side, face-to-face. And on the other side, we claim for more collaboration due to the effect that we have a lean hierarchy, less steps in hierarchy, and communication needs in some way face-to-face. So that's something which is bothering me. Okay.
All right, thanks. But that first question about data and handling data and the discretion that's needed, Cornelia.
Agreed. Agreed. I mean, the first question is also why data and for what, and what do we use it for? Because at the moment, what we have is an incredible amount of data. We're not catching up at all with what we could do with it, and not the security questions and so on. So on this, completely agreed. And the critical ability, I think you've mentioned also, is the key here, and that's at the moment also not being told and not so widespread. I'd like to build more on though your second point. I think that's actually the differentiation we need to move into now, that it's not either black or white. It's not either be at the office the whole time with all your colleagues there and sit in your own cubicle or in the open plan space or whatever, but it's the point of we have a choice. And we need to make an informed decision about what works when and for what. And we can also take into account more personal preferences. There was a big hype in the HR scene about the role of introverts and how people work together when they have, like, say, this only as an example, have different characteristics and preferences for different kinds of work. And say you need more a closed space with a bit of silence to do some certain kind of work. Now you have the choice. That does not mean you do not meet your colleagues at all, and so on. So you should make an informed choice, but it also means you could, at least theoretically, now you are empowered to bring your personal concerns, your private life, more into balance with what work demands from you.
Reliability of data, John.
That was exactly the first point I was trying to make about skills, was an ability for reasoned analysis and critical judgment of the sources that you used. So I'm absolutely with you on that. To your second point, in the mid-90s, I got a job in San Francisco to run a business that allowed musicians to play together online. And people said to me, musicians won't want to play together online. But of course what happened was they would play together in reality, and then they would play together online as well. And then there were other applications. So in the early parts of, say, making film music, you could take a musician from South Africa, one from Australia, and they could do the early work together in a virtual recording studio, and then you brought them together to finish it off. So it was like different tools for different parts of the job. But I mean, doing it, I think the idea of musicians being in a virtual recording studio all the time, I just don't think would fly, would it?
Ioannis, data.
I don't have so much big opinion about that. I think what you said is okay. But for the second point, what I'm interested in and what I strongly believe is that I'm interested in how one person can really shine with his or her own light. And I think that the only human configuration that this can happen is a network, which is a very different from community. And I don't want to get lost in terminology, but the characteristics of a community is that we need to belong in a community. And in a network, we just need to connect. And this can happen either online, either in a way of face-to-face. So I'm thinking that going more to the direction of a network will allow us to shine with our own light.
All right, let me keep driving this. We've got 20 minutes to run and move on to Bente Langvik-Olsen. Your question in a moment, but it's built on by Julian Bed, who's saying how secure the work life of these new future workers will be. Will public authorities be ready with pensions, healthcare, maternity leave? In other words, a significant change in the way people will have to understand how they'll have to provide for themselves. And Bente, you've talked about large groups of employees working within healthcare, in schools, in industry. What's your point?
Yes, that was just a simple question, actually, but how can they not be employed? Talking about nurses, doctors, everyone that is going to work within the healthcare sector in a big hospital or in a county where you're working for elderly care, in schools, those kind of large groups. Just wondering how...
So you're really saying this discussion is really irrelevant because there are so many basic things that need to be done?
Yeah, so I just wanted to know if you had an idea, how can they not be employed? Do you have another suggestion?
In other words...
My own view on that was that's exactly right. And people, well, you already see it. Digital is helping them do those jobs. But I'm not suggesting, I don't think I suggested at all that those jobs
But
will
it's
disappear.
changing their jobs, isn't
It'll change. It'll change their jobs. Just as medical technology has over the years, it will continue in that direction. Just a quick bit of data. I'm involved with the British University, and there's an institute that studied there what's happened to graduates. And they compared what happened in 1975, it's a British study, what happened in 1975 and what happened in 2005. And what they found was that the society in Britain adapted to absorb the greater number of graduates. And it took almost exactly the same amount of time in 1975 for a graduate to get a graduate level job as it did in 2005. You know, bigger number, and it absorbed them. But one of the critical changes was that the jobs that we thought of as graduate jobs had changed. And a big factor was nursing. And there were many more graduate nurses in 2005 than there were in 1975. So I think nursing is one of those examples where the job has had to deal with much more sophisticated technology and many other issues over the years. But there's now a job that really is at the forefront of using digital medical technologies to help us all.
Is there agreement up here? Yep, okay, good. Right, Clark Quinn, you're in the front row, but you've actually picked up on the point you made earlier, particularly about a better surgeon remotely or a less talented one locally. We can't maintain this communication via text, so tell us what your thought is, picking up from what Ioannis was saying. Well, use the microphone, pull it up a little bit, yeah.
I'm not quite sure where to
Why
hold
did you
it.
stand up so people can see, Clark Quinn?
Oh, God. You don't want to see me. The question was, we've already seen people, there have been doctors in Africa, local doctors who couldn't handle the special surgery, and so using a mobile phone, somebody came in remotely and guided them through a process, and they did a job that they couldn't have done if they didn't have these digital technologies. So earlier you were saying, do you want a doctor who has or hasn't seen YouTube? But the other thing is, so the question I asked was, do you want the better doctor remotely participating through telepresence in some way, or robotics, or the local person operating on you? I think, to your point, technology is changing, but I think it's also changing. It's a tired old cliche that, I don't want a person who's never had formal instruction. I also don't want a person who's never been participating in a community and continue to keep their skills up to date. But I think we're going to start breaking down these barriers, and we're going to have to start thinking about how do we develop all these people and get the best capability on the ground in the moment. And do
you think there'll be resistance to that, or acceptance that there is this significant transition and change?
I think in the long run, people are going to go, I want the best sales solution I can. I want the best person guiding this, and I want somebody close, local, who I can be talking to and communicating with them. But it's going to be the communication channels that have to be really transparent to make that work. So I'm talking to you who's local to me, and you're talking to them, but you're interpreting for me because I'm not a medico. You are, but that's the type of channels we're going to need to make this work, it seems to me.
Okay, they're going to have remote moderators soon.
On this, I would like to jump in quickly on a learning I had in a recent project on digitalization and work, where we were trying to find out what's already happening in the hospitals, and we had a random sample of 10 surgeons we talked to in European countries only, so that's one region. But the interesting thing we found out, and that really brought me to this conclusion that the system at the moment are slowing down what we can do, was that all these surgeons said that officially they are not allowed to use photography and lots of mobile technology in the ways that they need to. So if they want to provide, you want the best operation you can get, you said the best medical service, and also the surgeons, most of them, want to provide the best service they can and the best job done in the operation. So they know in some cases they need to talk to a colleague, and they need to send him a photo. But to get this process going takes so long that often it's completely unfeasible. So what they do is they break the law, basically. They do this, and everybody knows, obviously, between the surgeons that this is okay, and this is ethically correct. And they go on their private mobile, they've sent me photos of how they do this in the operating theater, without showing the patient's faces and so on, but they get the help they need. So this was, to me, was surprising. I cannot say it was a big study, so I cannot really vouch for how many people are doing it, but it seemed to me like a strong signal that people are using the technology when it helps them. and that the official system sometimes cannot catch up with the speed it takes.
We have agreement there. Okay. You've stimulated a lot of thinking about the role of corporates and institutions in actually embracing the need to establish a new way of working, employment, whatever you want to call it. But a couple of comments here. One from Nanda Stendhal on Twitter. It's not the workers who are resistant, it's our corporate policies and the rigid systems which are getting in the way. And backed up by Martin Siebel, at times blunt measures are needed to get bluntly conservative employers to move. Now, do you find that from your position, John, in Brussels, that conservative employers who are actually holding things back, not making the investments, not having that radical thought process, which really means that they've got to realize the opportunities as much as those working for them at the moment?
If you remember that corporations and institutions are just groups of people who have to work together to achieve things,
but backed by regulation and law.
Yeah, but often that is not the case. I mean, with the exception of what you've just described, where we can see the unintended consequences of a particular piece of legislation that maybe was built for times that other than today. But generally, I don't think that's the issue, and certainly less so in the private sector. I think often it's about remembering that your middle managers are workers too, and it's often that middle of the organisation that is quite slow to shift. So it's not black and white. It's not like the old mills of the past. There's the bosses and the workers. It's not like that anymore. I think it's there are people in different roles in an organisation who have different responsibilities, and you have to take everyone with you, including the middle managers, who will often be the ones who maybe the ones who are most threatened by change. I think that's often overlooked, taking that sort of the middle layer with you. So
there is a kind of reactionary problem at the top, which is...
No, I'd say there's a reactionary problem in the middle.
Okay. But they reflect the messages they're getting from the top.
Do you remember, I think, again, sorry about it being British, but Tony Blair said he had the scars on his back from trying to change the British civil service. Because you might have the political... You see it all the time. You see political leadership or big corporate leadership wanting to change, but the body corporate, the middle managers, resist, and you have to find something that motivates everyone in the structure to want to change as well.
Okay.
I'm a middle manager, so I can comment on that. I'm working as a middle manager in my company, and when change is coming in front of me, then there is resistance, and I have seen myself often resisting. And why am I resisting? I'm resisting for 3 reasons. The first is because I don't get it. And somebody needs to explain me why this change is getting on. The second is even if I get it, is because I don't like it. And there we have to, that's why I talked about being, some skills we need is about change management from human perspective, because you need to work on the emotional level. And there is a third thing within the organization is we avoid it so much. I may get it, I may like it, but I don't like you, that you are trying to implement the change. And this is the trust issue with the middle management, with the top management. And this creates a quite explosive situation.
Very well.
Right. We've got about 7 minutes to run. I want to give you notice about what needs to be taken away from this meeting, from this session, about where the time scale is, what the timeline is, what the time ambition should be, and what can be achieved, and what kind of vision people should go away with here, however horrendous it might be. But while you're thinking about that, let me take a question from the front, please. Introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. My name is Naji Al-Mahdi, and I'm from Dubai. I want to, rather than slow down, I want to just fast forward, very, very fast, and go to your world.
How far? How many years?
I don't know. Cornelia can tell us. It's the time when too many robots around the world, and all the jobs are being done by robots and so on. How would government work then? How would government function at that time? Who's going to pay taxes? Who is going to take care of the army? Who is going to do all of this at that time? And will they be struggling with issues like robot marriage?
Okay.
In other words, are institutions threatened?
The crystal ball would be nice now. We cannot say. We cannot say yet. I think we need to take the first step into sort of understanding, can we create at least an alternative social security system that's not built around work? And that's the first step we can take. And the rest, step by step, we'll be getting there. But I think we don't know yet. And that's the first step is we can figure out if we can get social security going without labor and paid work.
John?
Well, you mentioned Industry 4.0 earlier. It's interesting if any of you here in Germany have seen any of these charts about what do people mean by Industry 4.0. When you see the charts, you've seen loads of them, I know. You know, it's Industry 1.0, 2.0, it's trying to chart the sort of history of industrial technology revolutions, isn't it? I think the fact that it's 4.0 says it all. I think it's going to go 4.0, 5.0, 6.0. I think we're on a steady trajectory. So I don't really buy that picture. I know you don't really mean it either, but I think we see a world where we won't see a world where robots are coming to conferences. I'm sure of that. What we'll see a role where increasingly we're using bits of technology to help us do what we want to do. Taxes will continue to be generated. There'll be more and more of in an ideal world, more and more of that revenue will then be available to provide us for services for our increasingly aging population and so on. So I think that's the model is better productivity, better economic performance, more taxes generated, so better public services and infrastructure.
I've got news for you. I've actually moderated a robot, and actually the robot had some amazingly sensible answers and didn't know what the questions were going to be in advance.
How do you know you're not today? Yeah, how does he know?
I'm not commenting.
Right, let me pick up on this last issue of how do we... I've been fascinated thinking that you're a presentist, you're a futurist. Where does the present end and the future begin? Now, is it a few months, a few days, a few hours, a few years? But overall, what are you predicting will be the way in which we might be discussing this in a few years' time? What will be the new realities? We can be scaremongering. We've got to be strategic about this rather than just tactical. Ioannis.
Yeah, I think we need to shift more from tactical approaches to more strategic approaches. So, in terms of organizations, I think that a big shift that needs to take place is from these hierarchical systems that we operate, where the need is for structure and control, to more, as I said before, to more networking systems, where we can really shine with our own lights, and technology is going to be a supporter there and not a hurdle.
If I think back to when I first started work, and you go to a party and people would say, well, what do you do? And you say, well, I'm a systems analyst, I put computer systems in. And they'd say, I must get another drink. Whereas today everybody wants to not talk to me at parties, I hasten to add, but people do want to talk about digital in all walks of life. I mean, it used to be that digital was really about, it was computer systems for the office. And now it's digital in all walks of life, and I think that's going to continue, and then probably it'll disappear, and we won't have conferences on electricity in all walks of life, and we won't have conferences on digital in all walks of life, because we'll just be talking about whatever that way of life is, and digital will just become like electricity.
I completely agree on the notion of we have to stop on this reactive mode, I would call it. I mean, that's also something that comes with my work, that I think we have to step back from this whole, also a bit from the narrative of this whole VUCA and agility and all the speed and the acceleration. We have to react and adapt only, but really come back to this question of what kind of future do we want to create? And how can we set the direction to it? So go back to the agency. That's for me critical. And if I say what can we do on the individual level, I think there's two issues I haven't touched upon before, which is also learn to learn and learn to work in unstructured environments. We said before that there is less sort of predictability also how our work is organized, and often we need to organize ourselves, and we work in intercultural teams more and more, and in different project teams that might change. So we need to be able to organize ourselves. Yeah, and even if you work from home, that's a different setting, and it's a challenge for many people who wanted this to then get up and sit there and do the work, because there's so many distractions. It's much easier to do that in an office, actually, where all the signals are telling you to do so.
Well, one strategic question just in from Daniel Stoller-Schei. What is the connection of online learning to the future of work? Can you make a direct connection there, Ioannis?
It has to do with what I said. So we were going to be more autonomous. And then definitely we will take ownership of our learning, and this definitely goes through digital channels.
John?
Well, I mean, there are many of you in the audience who I think who are in this field, but from my own involvement in British universities, I know that the discussion has been very much about continuing down the road of a blended model and looking at it from the coming back to the medical discussion, really, how do you get the best learning outcomes using the variety of tools that are available to you? And I know one of the things that was actively discussed in some universities was combining to teach the first year course using more online tools, so less labor intensive, to concentrate the quality resources in the second and third years when you could generate some genuine differentiation in the universities. So the universities I was involved with were classically looking at online tools as a way of improving their productivity and performance.
I think it's also changing because it's the tools mean a democratization somehow of learning and of how we cooperate, and that plays a lot into how work is changing. So it's more bite-sized, it's more peer-to-peer. It's in one situation you're the learner, and the other you're the teacher. To make it practical, I'm in an online community, a Slack community called Domino for freelancers and small businesses. And I needed a new customer relation management tool, so a tool where I can put the data of my customers in. And there are thousands of these tools, as you know, so I put something in a Slack community and said, okay, who has experience and who can tell me? And 5 people came up, and one said, I can give you a quick walkthrough because I just made the selection myself. So I went on a Skype call with somebody I hadn't met before in the US, and he opened his desktop for me and he showed me the different tools, and at the end I made a selection. So he, in the trust that he will also get back from the community, gave me a half-hour tutorial, basically, on the tools that are there and what might work for me. And I'm prepared to do the same to the community for other issues I can help with. And I think that sort of very reflects a lot what the new realities are and can be. And that's very prevalent in the freelance community and the small knowledge workers, but not so much yet in the bigger institutions. But I think we're getting there.
Cornelia, thank you. We're out of time, but I'm just going to finish with 4 comments here from the floor from, isn't this a discussion about capitalism? Couldn't we realize the new work model here? And now, if we change capitalism, that's from Max Biege. The world is being changed and moving at an ever faster pace, but is that what the world actually wants? The third comment here, no name on that one. How do we slow down our current learning and development organization to break the reactive cycle? That from Jeff Kortenbusch. And finally from Benjamin Hone, in my understanding, the speed of automation, especially in the manufacturing industry, is too fast for employees to even adapt. We've given you a kind of staging post this morning. I suspect you want to return to it this time next year as well. And the question will be, how much faster has it gone than we've identified today, or were we correct today in charting the pace at which the nature of work, jobs, employment, employees, employers are adapting to all of this? But thank you all very much indeed, and thank you to the panel. Thank you.